We're in a moment of technological acceleration unlike anything the world has seen before. 5 years from now, life will look radically different, and the shift is already underway. I'm Rachel Wilkins, and this is The Good News Is, a show about what's next and how to meet it with curiosity. Each week, I'll talk with the thinkers and builders that are shaping the future, from the evolution of money to digital land, on-chain fashion, and even space travel. Let's get into it. All right, folks, we have such a treat today. I am getting to sit down with a slightly jet-lagged, but here with enthusiasm, the founder and CEO of SYKY, Alice Delahunt. Welcome.
Thank you so much. And yes, I am slightly jet lagged, but I'm here for it. I'm energized by all the incredible things that are happening around me. And I get to sit and chat to you, Rachel. I know it's a total
We had to come all the way to Paris to get together, even though we live in New York. But here we are.
Here we are. Here we are.
That's like the most Web3 thing ever. But
Absolutely. I love it.
But I'm so glad we get to sit down here in the middle of this conference. There's so much innovation and excitement happening, and you're doing something that's really pioneering. You are a company that is entirely focused on digital fashion. Now, when I talk to lay people, and I try and explain this with my very limited knowledge about digital fashion, it's a reach. So I want, since we've got you here, give us kind of the broad breakdown of what digital fashion is and what you think it's going to be and how it's going to impact just self-representation over the next couple of years.
Yeah, sure. So when we think about digital fashion in SYKY, we actually say that fashion is digital, physical, and augmented. So when we're talking about digital, we're just talking about digital only, right? So I know it's really popular to say like the metaverse is dead, but the reality is long live spatial computing. Look at the launch of Vision Pro, the figures around Roblox and Fortnite. The metaverse is very much here and very real. And even when you look at the statistics and the revenue based on apparel coming from those metaverses, it's truly phenomenal. I think Roblox sold 1.6 billion digital fashion items on their platform alone last year. I need to fact check that, but I'm pretty sure. The revenue that Fortnite sees from just skins and apparel is bigger than the revenue of many of the major fashion houses like Burberry, where one of my alma maters. And so that's kind of how we think about the digital fashion. So it's designing specifically for those worlds. Or something we're not talking about enough is like 3D renders and giving the tools to creators to actually dress their avatars in. So digital. Specifically physical as well. When we work with physical fashion, it almost always has to have a digital layer. So one of our first designers to launch on SYKY, Fan Rui, did the most incredible 3D printed resin bag physical that had a digital twin. She sold for 1.65 ETH, which is luxury price points in an auction where there was a bidding war. But that's how we think about the physical fashion. And then when you think about augmented, it's really about like augmenting the world that's around us. So like augmented reality, obviously you see amazing stuff with Snap. We think the Vision Pro is going to have a phenomenal impact on that. But I think as our realities become more and more blurred, we will see a blurring in terms of augmented fashion as well. So that's how we think about it. I think, I hope it makes sense. But we're building for all of that.
It's amazing. And I think one of the things that really struck me when I was learning about SYKY and got to hear you speak in New York was just this idea of democratizing access to designers. Like it's been historically the case where most of the designers that get championed are either well-connected, live close to these, dynamic cities that are thriving in the fashion world, Milan, New York, etc., or they have, these connections. And so what you're doing is actually empowering creators from all corners of the earth. So talk to us a little about that part of the mission.
Yeah, I have to say, every single person who works at SYKY is incredibly passionate about that because what we saw, I professionally grew up, but I grew up during the social media, revolution and saw the impact that had on creators, but just democratizing access to who got to be a fashion photographer, who got to sit in the front rows, who got to have a point of view on fashion and its narrative. And I think the internet and specifically platforms like Instagram really catalyzed that in an incredible way. And I think what has been slower to change is actually the disruption of fashion houses, right? Who, by the way, all the major houses, they're here to stay in the same way that many of the greatest fashion photographers are here to stay and as important as ever. But because of these changes we're seeing, we think that there's actually challengers coming in. So in the same way that maybe at Tyler Photos had access to Instagram, we think that Glitch of Mind having access to Blender and it will have a similar impact because to start a fashion house, you need capital. You need to deploy capital because samples are costly. right? Production is costly. It's a really hard thing to do. And you tend to have capital behind you at a very early stage to be in one of the major cities or getting grants from one of the major governments. We all know there's 4 major fashion weeks. There's many more, but there's 4 major ones. And I think for us, what was really important is let's launch something called the SYKY Collective and just get the best of the best talent that's out there who are designing digitally first. Let's look at raw talent and see, who we can come across and what we can find. And the most amazing designers came through to us where we went through a blind process all the way up into interviews. We came out with 10 designers from 10 totally different backgrounds and points of view, styles, perspective. Even what they want to build is entirely different. And that was a really amazing process for us because now they're part of the SYKY Collective and they get to be mentored by SYKY, which I hope they're happy with, but also the British Fashion Council. So they're an official partner of ours. So the British Fashion Council has a New Gen, which has seen luminaires like Lee McQueen go through it, Stella McCartney and Christopher Bailey, some of the greatest British designers, but they're British designers. Now the SYKY Collective, who are from all over the world, get access to those tools and resources that British designers get access to as well. Not only that, they're also mentored by the incredible Megan Casper, who is a phenomenal person in the Web3 space, entirely understands digital fashion, and gives and helps them navigate that space as well. Mark Chiducci, a global creative editorial director of Vogue, and he brings such an incredible perspective in terms of fashion, building brands. The same as Sabrina Marchand, he's a director at Frosty, who work with some of the biggest fashion brands in the world as a creative director. And we then also have the amazing Matthew Ball. So no one needs to say his name twice. Obviously, one of the greatest thinkers, if not the greatest thinker on the metaverse today. So that was an incredibly important thing for me personally. We work with our collective. We go through an incubator program. We also work with traditional brands as well. We launched New York Fashion Week last year with Calvin Klein and ID because we think it's really important to bridge both worlds. And as I said, back to Instagram, in the same way that we still have some of the greatest photographers that have existed 20 years ago, still exist today. And now we have this amazing new guard who kind of came up and got a following on Instagram first. We think that, Steffi Fung can be and has the potential to be as big as Gucci.
So let's play devil's advocate a little bit here because, tradition, any new technology that comes in, tradition always gets a little bit uncomfortable. It's kind of the human response to change. How are the institutional brands treating you, and how are they starting to see that this is a new era, and are they starting to embrace this technology? Are you looking to kind of collaborate with any of those institutional brands, or are you really kind of coming out as a trailblazer and pioneer here?
So I come from institutional brands. That's where I grew up. I had the privilege to work at Burberry when Christopher Bailey and Angela Ahrendts were there, and they wholeheartedly embraced digital. I then went and became the chief digital officer and chief content officer at Ralph Lauren, where you had Ralph Lauren, one of the world's greatest entrepreneurs, right? And the CEO, Patrice Lebay, such a champion of digital, absolutely embrace all things that we were trying to do in the space. And I think that's really, really important because I think a lot of brands missed out on the start of .com and that .com moment. A lot of luxury brands were late to that. Burberry wasn't. Burberry was a total leader and many followed. I think brands are really cognizant of what's happening today in this space. I mean, when I was at Ralph Lauren, we launched on Zappos, on Roblox. They've done an amazing launch on Fortnite since. Brands get it. They know it's happening. I think it's a tricky place to navigate because there's a lot of noise, right, that we see and we have to hear. But when you distill the noise and look at the facts, you can see that this space is inevitably going to grow. And it is still so early, but we embrace the major and institutional fashion brands wholeheartedly. In fact, many of the C-suites in it are part of our Keystone community and look to us for education and onboarding. And yeah, we've got some exciting partnerships to talk about soon, but not yet.
So no alpha today.
No,
don't have you for too long, but we're going to get you back for sure.
Love it.
So before we kind of get into the mechanics, one of the things I don't think we're asking enough of founders is what is the why? Why are you doing this? What was the motivation? Like you said, you come from this amazing career in the traditional world. You've, built out a legacy of your own in that world. Why now pivot to this? Why now take on this huge project? Where you are educating, you have to educate people to bring them along on this journey. What's the why? What's the motivation?
It's a really good question. And a lot of people ask me it because I had a phenomenal job, surrounded by incredible people, but just something in me, and I think maybe my purpose just drove me to do something like this. I think that there are very few moments in your life that you're watching a seismic shift in something. And I think the last seismic shift I saw was when the App Store launched on the iPhone. And I was working in traditional advertising and I had to make a leap. And I think we're seeing the same seismic shift today. And I don't think I'm wrong about that. And I think it's inevitable. And in fact, I'm sure it's inevitable. I just hope that Psyche can be, the biggest, game changer in that regard. And that's what we're really pushing for. We want to bridge the old world and the new world, emerging designers with established designers, and create a fashion industry that is even more creative while being even more equitable.
Mm. You know, to that point, I was thinking about how I've heard a lot of people kind of compare this moment to the early .com days. And what I think is really interesting is that art and technology have kind of co-evolved together. So this idea that you're using this extremely nuanced but extremely innovative blockchain technology, but you're also embracing creators that are, in Africa or on the other side of the globe and empowering them with these tools. It's thrilling, and it really kind of goes along with that evolution of technology. So let's talk about the Keystone passes. They did sell out. They're completely gone, folks. You're too late. You can't get your hands on one of these right now. Maybe secondary. But talk to us about that. What is a Keystone holder? What's the utility? What's involved in that, and what can they expect?
Yeah, so we're really proud of our Keystone community. Actually, I am here with our community lead who minted the pass last January and who then entered a raffle to join me at the Financial Times Luxury Summit in Monaco, and was a super active part of the community, completely gets and understands the space, loved Psyche. So we brought her on board. And for any of you who don't know her, it's Asia. Go find her, join our community. She's here somewhere. Join our community. She knows all things Keystones. But what we do is for the Keystone community, it's like in 3 pillars. It's education, access, and experiences. So when you think about education, we produce weekly reports just on like what's going on at the moment in digital fashion, what's interesting, mints to watch, like what is happening in the space that you really should know about. And then we do quarterly deep dives. So really deep dive into something like AI's impact on the fashion industry, what the West can learn from the East and its embrace of digital fashion. And we spend a lot of time on those, and we treat them as like very serious reports. And then we also just like host things called Psyche Spaces, where we get leaders in the industry to come have a conversation. The community's invited and we get to learn together.
So this IRL experience is a big part of what you're building.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Tonight, for example, we're doing to celebrate the launch of Steffi Fung's collection on psyche.com and Nextberry's collection on psyche.com. We're doing an event with Polygon Labs that we're super proud of, and our community will be there, are showing up in force. We think that like tangible in-person connections are really important. And we have an office. We invite our creators to come and work from it, in New York, and we're proud of that. And so, yeah, it's a really important part. And we put that under experiences because we categorize experiences as like digital and physical. So, we announced Nicola Formichetti as our, congratulations, thank you, our artistic director. I'm so proud to have him on the team. But as part of doing that, we did a digital, Zoom with our Keystone community to meet him, to ask questions, to hear about his vision, as well as did a physical event where our New York-based community members could come and meet him. And we think that's really, really important. We don't want a location to be a barrier to entry into this space. And then the final thing is access. So going back to the example of Asia joining us in the Financial Times, due to my time probably in the fashion industry, I definitely get access to a lot more than I did when I started out at 23, right? Was invited to absolutely nothing. Right. But when I get to speak at certain things, for example, the Financial Times Luxury Summit, I get to bring community members along. We tend to open that up in a raffle for people to come and join us. They've joined us at so many places now around the world. And it's been a really wonderful thing actually to get to know people IRL as well. So that's one of the things I'm most proud of, actually, the group of people that are around our platform and our collective and who show up to support them every day.
I think collaboration and community is such a It's such a big part of Web3, and it's what has drawn and really kept a lot of us here, especially during the down times, the bear market. Um, when you think about building here, the decision to use blockchain technology, talk to us a little bit about that, but talk to us also about your plans to use other technology like AI, like VR, obviously AR. It's a big part of the conversation. But talk to us about the role that you see community playing in that tech evolution for Psyche.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because sometimes the way I think about Web3, it's like two things, right? One, it's like infrastructure and a technology, that we believe and I believe can revolutionize many things. And secondarily, it's like a subculture, which is phenomenal to your point, which is so grounded in community, freedom, expression. And there's something so special about that. So we wholeheartedly embrace that. Actually, I've, been long before I founded Psyche, a partaker in the community.
Are you a DGen, Alice?
I have been a DGen since
We just outed Alex. She's DGen.
I have been a total DGen. I think DeFi summer was like whoa, this is incredible. I went down the rabbit hole and never looked back. But it took me 2 years then to start Psyche. So, but yeah, no, absolutely. I've loved watching the evolution of so many projects and so much incredible, innovation, like 10KTF coming along and doing that first mint with apes and world of women. Like, it was so phenomenal. I actually have their very first mint, the trainers, with my meows. I have, but so yeah, I'm out of myself. You are AOG. Wow. Anyway, I thought it was an ape, world of women, all the projects. So, mint to the Clone X. Yeah, super cool. But I've lost my train of thought. I got so sorry. Because I didn't. Yeah, you did. No, totally.
Well, the subculture that exists and how dynamic and exciting and just very still feels quite underground, right?
It is still underground. And I think the people my personal opinion is it's best to build in a bear. I think you find the people who really have grit and believe in it versus are just doing it to make a quick buck, to jump on culture. And I work in the fashion industry. I know trends come and go and people jump on and off. So the people who have been here building, I hope are foundational to what comes as it becomes less of a subculture. If that's my hope. And on a personal note, it's been such a joy to, be a part of that journey. It's hard. I mean, it's hard when you're building and your wider ecosystems. But isn't your space dead? I'm like, no, we're just getting started.
Gens are here.
We're just getting started. So that's phenomenal. But to your point on other technologies as well. So we see Web3 as foundational. We think that blockchain is so important, specifically around creator royalties for us. I think there's new financial models as well that are interesting to think of and apply to Psyche. We're not there yet. But on top of that, I think spatial computing for us is something we're watching so closely. It kind of all goes back to that physical, digital, and augmented, and really what's facilitating that and aligning ourselves with the right platforms, I would say, that make sense for the style of fashion we want to lean into. And then we like being underpinned by Web3. You would check out with crypto. We now have enabled fiat payments as well.
Amazing.
But yeah, we're all about being a bridge.
That's awesome. So I know we don't have you for too much longer. We are actually right on the minute here, but I think it's super important to talk collaborations real quick. First of all, collaborations at the level of who is behind you, who's backing you, who's put their money where their mouth is and said, we believe in Psyche. Talk to us a little about investors who's involved.
So we are super proud to have our round was led by 776, Alexis Ohanian. He is
just known as Serena's husband. No, I'm just Alice.
We love it. Interestingly, actually, my pitch deck had the evolution of identity on a slide, starting off with the early emojis, into Bitmojis, into Clone X. So there was something almost serendipitous about that.
Reddit.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so Alexis was our lead investor, and we have other phenomenal people around the cap table. I want to call out Colleen Sullivan, Brevin Howard. We have CMT Digital. We've just a great crew who are super supportive. And then we, as kind of, in our part, we extend that in terms of collaboration then with our emerging designers, and getting people on the platform, and are hoping to build the infrastructure that really supports that for the next generation of fashion.
And collaboration that you're excited about right now.
Oh, I'm so excited. I mentioned our collective and Steffi Fung. She was just on stage, did a phenomenal job, walked out with her outfit on that is on Psyche at the moment. The physical one been brought to life by Digital Twin. Nextberries from Nigeria. If you don't know Nextberries, check them out. Those two are some of the most dynamic innovators and designers that I've ever seen. I'm so proud of everything they're doing, and it is just the beginning for them at the moment. But, someone who wasn't in the space that is known for like iconic dresses, we just launched KWK. So KWK, if anyone knows Beyonce and the Renaissance tour,
Who?
yeah, exactly. I don't know, just this like superstar.
Yes.
But he designed the famous dress for Beyonce. It's a one of one. The famous Bjork dress. It's a one of one, and the Carol G dress on the cover of Rolling Stones. They are currently on psyche.com on private sale at the moment, going for public on next Friday. But like we have like one of one physical, and then we have the digital versions of them as well. So
Incredible.
Hay wasn't necessarily massively in the space. He'd experimented with digital fashion, but to put those 3 iconic dresses up for digital sale with Psyche, like for me, that's like part of moving the industry forward. And whoever gets those pieces, that's historic. So I'm super excited for it.
I'm so excited for you. And just, not on a serious note, but can we please do something about the word digital?
Oh, in the last week, I've been like, in the last week, I've like started to, I was just like, I'm just going to embrace it, but I don't want to. Can someone please make a
I think it's on you. I think with your background in fashion and the fact that you're pioneering, we're going to leave it in your hands
Okay.
to redefine physical digital.
Okay.
Away from digital.
I'm going to put my head together with Megan Casper coming for you and Daria from Dress Up. And we're going to come back.
We're going to come back to this show, and we're going to redefine.
100%. Megan and Daria coming for you.
Amazing. All right. Final thoughts for somebody who perhaps is new to digital fashion. Best place to start learning.
I think everyone starts with an innate curiosity, that leads them down a rabbit hole of excitement. And I'm not being biased by saying the best place to start is Psyche. Join the community, or just join our Discord. You don't even need like a pass to jump in and join the Discord and just have fun and meet people and access many of our events. Get in touch with me directly, get in touch with our community lead. We're so happy to talk anyone and everyone through what's happening in the space. And yeah, that's what I would say. I would say that we're super proud to have education as part of our pillar, because it exists on both sides. I'll tell you one story very quickly that was like so humbling for me. But when we had initially launched our Keystone, that week we opened it up to emerging designers before and just said, hey, we're allocating a certain amount of Keystone. No, it's not a mint. We'll airdrop it to you. Just apply, right? So we got a ton of applications for it. But someone called me and told me that a professor at a design school in London had just taught a class on Web3 because one of his students had asked him what a wallet was because he wanted to join a new community called Psyche. So we've got a ton of students from that like school in our community. And 48 hours later, I sat with one of the most famous editor-in-chiefs in the world and went through how to open a wallet to mint their pass so they could get access to our education report.
Was it Anna Wintour?
There's no names. There is no, it was not Anna Wintour. If it's no name, it was no names. But we sat, and then honestly, the mint went live, and I got on a Zoom with the president of a major company. I'm not going to say anything just in case you try and say another name. And help them go through their first ever mint.
That's incredible.
So I will just caveat it was not Anna Wintour.
It was not Anna Wintour, folks, just in case. We'll let the audience try and figure out who.
Do try and figure it out.
This has been wonderful. Folks, make sure you check out Alice Delahunt and Psyche.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Rachel. It was so nice.
Thanks for tuning in to The Good News Is. If you're excited about what's next, make sure to follow the show and visit goodnewsstudio.io for more stories, guests, and ways to stay connected. Until next time, stay curious.